Well, you talked before about JD, who was certainly a preseason favorite for 41. Let's talk about someone who, in my opinion, has come across as a preseason favorite even in the couple of days that the cast has
Oh,
been out. We're talking about Jesse Lopez, the former gang member turned political science PhD student.
okay. I did not know that Jesse was already a person who is taking some high spots in the Survivor fantasy drafts.
Yeah, I think what it is, and we'll certainly talk about his story. I think one of the in a cast that is full of obviously a lot of big, important stories, like Jesse certainly has one of the more remarkable ones from where he went to where he is now. I think a lot of people understandably credit the fact that due to his background, he kind of has both sides of street smarts and book smarts, which
Ooh.
obviously both come in handy in different regards. I think he has a really good head on his shoulders to tackle this game. We'll see your take once we listen to this interview. But yeah, from what I've been gleaning, I think Jesse is someone who has been both popular in terms of his story as well as someone who people think could legitimately do well in this game.
I'm surprised we never got that as a theme. Street smarts versus book smarts.
Well, listen, there was a NBC reality show that went with that for one season, and it was pretty bad.
Okay, yeah. I
Yeah,
guess they used that up. Yeah.
yeah. Mark Burnett's like, if we're not going to reuse themes.
Okay. All right. Do you miss themes at all like a year into this?
It's tough because like I kind of do. It's
I
tough because
kind of
like
do too.
I think it's just a matter of like I don't want sort of like repetition, you
Like pick
know?
good
Like
themes.
I think for a while people were getting tired of the themes and that was understandable. And now we've sort of gone into okay, now there's no themes and now people are starting to get tired again. I think it's honestly just like homogeny that people are tired of.
I guess no theme is better than a bad theme, but I think a good theme is better than no theme.
Yeah, I think it's tough because like
That's the power rankings. Good theme, no theme, bad theme.
But like David versus Goliath, there's a difference between like a theme being good for the cast and good for the season. David versus Goliath from a storytelling perspective, objectively good for the season. From the cast perspective, very bad theme because half the cast could tell you, right? Like, hey, you're a Goliath. That means that people at home probably don't want you to win the game. Like, that's not great. Calling an entire tribe heroes, a little tough when it comes to just the outside
Mm-hmm.
perspective being brought in. But man, do I miss the days of just like the shit posting of making fun of Survivor themes, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
even did this past season of Survivor South Africa. I came up with servers versus savers versus seals. Like I just miss the kind of odd holes that we used to cram people into. I'm grateful now that we don't need to do that again from like the contestants' perspective, having to view from the outside in. But you know, we always like to keep the players and the fans themselves on their toes. And I do kind of there's a part of my heart that kind of misses the themes as weird as they may have been.
Okay. All right. Mike, back to Jesse. Anything else you want to set up before we listen to Jesse himself?
Jesse, 30 years old, again, political science PhD, living in your backyard, hopefully not literally, in Durham, North Carolina.
Okay. All right. Let's listen to Jesse.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I am here on Survivor. Other than the $1 million, right? That should be everyone's like one of everybody's first answers. On Survivor because I am wanting to set an example for my family, set an example for my son and my daughter. Everything I do in life really is about just doing what's best for my family. And I think that to be out here to play this game, to sort of chase this dream. Is what I want them to see. Is what I want. Is the example that I want to set for them.
What's your history with watching Survivor?
I watched Survivor when I was younger. I definitely watched, like, I remember watching Michael Scoop fall into the fire for season 2. I remember sitting there and watching that. I think the last season of the early seasons that I watched live was Boston Rob and Amber and All Stars and the whole proposal. That was the last season I remember watching live when I was younger. But then I ended up getting back into it because I got a PhD in political science and I, studied voting behavior for a while. And I really was interested. I wanted to find something to watch that was, related to voting, related to politics, social politics. And I was like, what is out there that I could watch and enjoy, on my downtime? And Survivor is all about that. It's all about voting, all about social politics. And so I came back around to it around, I think, Ghost Island, and I sort of just fell back in love with it and rewatched all the seasons. I've watched Australian Survivor, Survivor in New Zealand. I've listened to all the podcasts. So I'm a huge fan of the show and I'm very excited to be out here.
Mailbox. So, hi, Jesse, if you're listening. Just a quick shout out
Yes.
there.
Yes. If you're a political scientist, that I feel like Ghost Island would be a good season to start to watch because it's
Yeah,
you get to see about what happens if there's a tie vote.
exactly. Of like, okay, now I see the sort of the jury parliament decisions and how split they can
Hmm.
be. So yeah, I think that it's interesting that Jesse gets brought in
Yes.
sort of through that perspective, right? And especially I think what's really going to help him is that we are in an era where like voting calculus is maybe more important than ever. Considering what happened with the quote unprecedented tribal council, right, with Vati, with like everything going on with the no, where are the votes and everything, where they because of nuanced circumstances and certain people not having votes. Like, I think you really need almost a mathematician on your side to figure out, you saw this with Marianne again with that extra vote plan on Omer of like, okay, we can do the split if I use the extra vote here. I think that Jesse's particular set of skills would actually come in handy in the new era more than ever. Of okay, if this person doesn't have a vote, but this person has an extra vote, like how can we manipulate the numbers to get the outcome we want?
But consider me very naive in like what political science actually is. Like that to me sounds more like being like that I don't know. That seems and again, maybe it is game theory of all that. Like I feel like that political science is a little bit like understanding like the why of politics as opposed to
Mm.
the actual machinations of the numbers. But again, I am not the one with a PhD in political science.
Yeah, he said he studied voting behavior, right? Which I think maybe
Hmm.
speaks towards that why. And it's tough. I think it is a bit of a square peg into a round hole when it comes to the why, because it's like, why? Well, the why is $1 million, which is very different than I would imagine how people usually vote in terms of elections or other sort of like political affiliation. So it's not exactly a one for one comparison, but I do think it's interesting that this guy's like, all right, I'm studying voting. Let me find a TV show that revolves around voting. Oh, yeah, Survivor. Yeah, I guess I'll start watching that
Hmm.
again.
Yeah. I
Well, last
mean,
time he watched Rob was actually maybe he was like, "Oh, that guy Rob Cesternino got voted out. I'm never watching this show
yeah, I
again."
was gonna say that like Survivor All Stars would make me quit watching the show too.
Exactly. There's like, "All right, Jerry got booed out of Madison Square Garden. I'm done."
Done, done. Okay, all right. Let's go back to Jesse.
Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
Okay. So for Survivor winner that I identify with the most, I'd have to go with, this is tough. I want to say Tony. I'm gonna say Jeremy. I think I'm gonna break the rule. I'm gonna go with Jeremy and Tony because I think that both of them were sort of motivated by their family. At least what you saw on TV was like they seemed to be very motivated by, doing. They were out there to play the game, and they were playing the game with their family in mind. And that is something that I want to do, and that's something that I plan to do. For non-winner that I identify with the most, this is gonna be recency bias, but I'm gonna go with Shan. Because she has sort of history with gang affiliation, and I do as well. When I was 16, I was jumped into a gang, and I sort of navigated my way out and ended up getting my GED and getting a PhD. And I believe Shan has a PhD as well, so I sort of identify with Shan in that respect.
What's your
Mailbag, mailbox. Sorry.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, my name's not Akiva, Rob.
Sorry about that, Mike. So interesting. I believe the first time we're getting Survivor 41 people mentioned as who were you going to play like?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And there will certainly be people that are referenced for both 41 and spoiler alert for 42 with this question, even though 42 had yet to finish by the time that this season had ended up starting. But I think given Jesse's background, it does make a lot of sense. And I do wonder, like, Jesse and Shan seem like completely different people, but I do wonder how much he's going to bring in a bit of that play style. Say what you want to about Shan, but like, she ruled a lot of the game up until her boot because of her sociability, because of her ability to connect with people, while also like invoking again some of those street smarts, some of the like keeping one eye over your shoulder elements that came from her background. And it seems like Jesse, I think, is able to invoke that as well. So I think the Shan is a good comparison. It's so interesting, Rob. We are now in 3 interviews in, 2 for 3 and people talking about Tony. But I think different sides of Tony. Cody talked about how much, he thought that Tony was a provider and like wanted to provide a lot of comic relief for Jesse. And he talked about this in his first answer. Like maybe it's the Vin Diesel look about him, but it's all about family. He is here to really set an example for his family. Do you think that will at all hamper doing important things in this game when it comes to making, cutthroat decisions?
That he is doing this for his family or setting an example for his family?
Yeah, this idea of like, if I'm setting an example for my family, if I'm thinking about
No.
those people
The
back home,
best example is winning, Mike.
I just asked Dwight. He doesn't think that you're not setting
Mhm.
a good example for your family if you're doing anything but winning. And I think he did credit Tony, who I think, especially in his first game, like did a lot of devious things for the sake of his family. So I think, yeah, that's a good point about how just because you're thinking about the people back home does not
Yeah.
necessarily mean that you need to like declaw yourself because of it.
Yeah, I think within reason that I think you win the show. I don't think anybody in your family is going to be like, but why did you lie to that person?
Oh, Lil, I didn't realize you came to the
You
family
said
reunion.
you said you were going to set an example.
I'm just imagining Jesse being like, "Hey, Lil, I just came back from playing Survivor.
Did you lie?
Did you take my advice and not lose the hook?
Yeah. So
Did you do the squats like I asked you to?"
I think it'll be fine. And I'm obviously going back to Jeremy and Tony, that the thing that I think bonded them as friends on Survivor 40 was that they both had that relationship of like, okay, we're providers for our family and we're doing this for our family. And I think that's I think one of the reasons why Jeremy was so hurt by what Tony's ultimate betrayal, because they did have the same why.
The question is, how many days does Jesse think are in a week?
That's true.
If
And do
he's
weekends
invoking
count?
yeah, is he invoking both Tony and Jeremy? I think I need to figure out what side he falls there.
Okay.
What's your favorite moment in Survivor history?
I think my favorite moment might be Parvati's double idol play. I think her double idol play in Heroes versus Villains was really cool. Idols are just awesome and fun to have in the game, and I would love to find one out there and be able to play it in some sort of unique way that's never been done before.
How eager will you be to look for advantages in the game?
I know everybody says like don't do, like it's so cliche now, like on the seasons, like first episodes, everybody's like, oh, that your number one mistake is to go out on your own and look for an idol. I'm gonna be really tempted to go out there and look for an idol on day one, just because I mean this is such a unique opportunity. It's only once in a lifetime, and it's like kind of want to just go for it, right? So I'm gonna be extremely tempted.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
I don't know if I can boil it down to a single like life experience, but I think like I mentioned, just like going from, being in this position when I was a teenager, of being in a juvenile hall, being a gang member, like having a tattoo on my face and head, thinking that the next step was going to be like prison, and having, finding a way to, take whatever opportunities I could to pivot away from that and get into a PhD program. I ended up in Berkeley. I ended up going to Duke, getting a PhD. And now I just bought my first home with my wife, and, we're living on a cul-de-sac. So I think that, I think that sort of journey that I've had, just navigating life's challenges and finding a way to make it and come out on top, I think that's prepared me for this game.
What excites you the
Mailbox.
most? Yeah, so we can meditate on that for a second. Again, we've talked about this story a couple times. What do you think, Rob, about the way Jesse pitches it to how it applies to the game? Of like, I was able to work my way out of tough situations before. That should be able to work on the island as well.
Well, I think it's a case for when we talk about people that have life experience versus people that are just coming in without as much sort of like a lived experience. How old is Jesse, by the way?
30.
30. Yeah. So, that's start like that. I feel like that's that window of like a really good age to be playing Survivor. So like, I definitely feel like having those experiences to draw from are very helpful for Survivor players.
I think so as well, particularly again, where like just the way Jesse is phrasing it, I think works really well. Of like, and he is not going to be the only cast member who vocalizes this, but I think those that come in with the the life experience that I think gives him a lesson of like, if you don't like your fate, your placement, change it. I think that is probably the thing that translates most to the game of Survivor, right? Where it's like, I don't like the position I'm in at this moment. Rather than waiting for the 51% of outcomes for the roulette ball to land on the right space and I benefit from something, like, let me give myself the initiative to move forward, which I think is different than like just outwardly having that initiative to start something, more so the ability to react to the position you're in and then say, okay, how can I change that? I think that is a valuable life skill to have.
Okay. All right. Back to Jesse.
What excites you the most about the new era of Survivor?
I think it's the fact that there's just so many unknowns. Like 41 and 42 kind of blew up the whole game, right? Like everything was different. 26 days, no rice, idols. You have to say crazy phrases and all of this randomness and just unknown aspects to the game. And we don't know going in if it's going to be like 41 or 42, or if it's going to be, they're going to revert back and maybe bring fire tokens, or maybe just go back to, any sort of earlier seasons format. I think the fact that there's just so much unknown is very exciting. We're just walking into the unknown, and I really enjoy that aspect of it.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
So I have tattoos on my arm, and I'm trying to sort of break I think my default face, like at home, is just like very like furrowed brow and just kind of like stern. But I think I've just been trying to be like more myself out here, like around people. Be who I am when I'm with my wife and my kids in my comfort zone, and that's really hard, be vulnerable like that. But that's when I'm sort of like my most friendly, my most happy. So I'm going to really just try and sort of bring who I am at home with my family out to this game, to sort of break any sort of perceptions that people might have that I'm, unfriendly or, not approachable and things like that.
What type of player are you looking for in an alliance?
I think I'm looking for somebody who's dependable and who's like willing to just talk through strategy and, bounce ideas off of, and who's thoughtful about it. I don't want anybody who's hard to predict in my alliance. I like people who are predictable, and I like, like people who I can count on. So I'm going to look for somebody who's, stable. Stable. I'll go with the word stable.
What's the one thing you told yourself you wouldn't do in this game?
Oh, what did I tell myself? I'm trying to think. Maybe what did my wife tell me not to do in this game? Let's think. Oh, what did I not want to do in this game? I guess so. I think the one thing I don't want to do in this game is, if I'm lucky enough to sort of make it to final three, right? I don't want to tear down the other people's games that are in final three as well. I think that a lot of times people want to tear down other people's games and just like be a negative Nelly on the people who they're sitting with. But I think it's really important to like build the other people's games up, but also build your game up just enough so you can show that it was better than theirs. Not to be like too long-winded or anything, but like in academia, when you're writing a paper, you want to build up the straw man argument. You want to sort of have this counter argument look strong, and then you want to say, but here's why my argument is better. And so I definitely don't want to go into Final Tribal and sort of say how weak everyone else's games were and you all suck or anything like that. I want to build everyone up and just talk about why my game was strong.
What's the best advice you received before coming out to play?
I think I got a duplicate question.
Oh, you did?
What's the best advice that you received before coming out to play? He said, what did my wife tell me? Oh,
best advice I received was from my wife, who told me to just be myself and have fun.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing you wouldn't do was what did my wife tell me?
My bad, Mike. Okay, I saw 5 seconds left. I thought it was a mistake. Okay. You want? Should we just take that clean?
I mean,
okay.
it's a throwaway question, but feel free to play it.
Okay. Just make a point to clean this up. Okay.
You all suck or anything like that. I want to build everyone up and just talk about why my game was strong.
What's the best advice you received before coming out to play?
Best advice I received was from my wife, who told me to just be myself and have fun.
Okay. Mike, there is Jesse. And yeah, now hearing this all through, I think a lot to like about Jesse.
Yeah, I think you could get a lot of a sense through these interviews as like, I don't know, I don't want to derive interpersonal skills assumed from just having them talk into a Zoom, but I think someone like Jesse, again, on paper you say like, yeah, he has the street smarts, he has the book smarts, but is he someone that people can get along with? But like he seems to have a really light, I think, way to get on with things. Like he's constantly laughing throughout the interview. He does admit, as he did point out earlier, that maybe the first impression of him is that he is a little more hardened. He has a bit of that furrowed brow. He does in the picture actually that we're looking at, though that might partially be more of a sun thing than it does a personality thing. But I do think that if he has time, and again, I think that if Vesey does go on a challenge streak, he'll have enough time to be able to like show who he actually is, which does seem to be a bit of a softie. In his bio, when they talk about, three word or favorite hobbies, he says, playing chess with my son, dancing with my daughter, binge watching shows with my wife after the chess player and dancer fall asleep. And so
Mhm.
I think that he is someone who, as he spoke about in the very first answer that he gave in the course of this interview, like very much oriented around his family, like almost a bit of a softie, despite the hard exterior. And so I do think, much like a good M&M, once you break through that candy coating, like there is a lot of sweetness inside.
Yeah, seems like a nice guy. The thing that is, and I think that like that's a nice package. I think for Survivor, where it's sort of like okay, maybe more of like a gruff exterior, but then you get past that, and it's like oh, actually this person is like incredible, and like I love being around this person. So I really like that in terms of it's certainly better than the opposite. So
Mm.
then the thing that like in trying to like combine this all together, okay, what is Jesse looking for in his allies? Predictable allies. That to me, this is somebody, he is, a serious professional. He has to to get a PhD. I kind of wonder if maybe he's not gonna gel with somebody who's like a Cody, who is, hey,
Mm.
I'm just here, I'm vibing, I'm here, I'm having fun, whatever happens, as long as I make 51% of my decisions be right, like I'm good. Like I feel like that Jesse, I don't see him working well with Cody.
Yeah, I mean, we have Chaos Cody and like the stability in Jesse. He literally mentions stable. That is a possible conflict point that I could imagine happening. I also wonder, to the point we made earlier about, Dwight not necessarily withholding his own educational affiliation. What do you think Jesse's going to say to his tribe members as to what he does? Because I could see him, he benefits from his image, and then I think he'd be able to like really dress down that perception and then really come maybe out at the 11th hour and be like, actually, I'm a political science PhD, but you wouldn't necessarily know that. He says in his bio that essentially he's you don't look at me and see a scholar, as Biggie says, I'm sicker than your average. And so I do wonder if he finds, a number one or a number two puck in that regard, like, is he going to open up necessarily
I
about
mean,
this
I mean,
secret
Biggie
academic
didn't
background?
didn't didn't want to work with Tupac.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe if
That
they
was the
just had
problem.
talked, if they had just talked through those two paper cups and just hashed things out, maybe they
Mhm,
could have seen some
mhm.
common ground. But I do wonder how much Jesse is going to be open about, in particular, his academic stuff, because I can imagine that's something that he keeps in his back pocket of like, yeah, I'm perceived as kind of like this, easy going, tougher guy, but secretly I know a bit more about like the way these people are operating.
Yeah. Could he tell his story and then maybe just change up his like I mean, is political science that threatening? Like if he has like some other thing that he could say that his degree is in, like his
Or
college professor. I mean, everybody has to be something.
Or even just like stop his story at getting the GED, right? Which like isn't inspiring in and of itself. If I worked my way out of a one-way trip to prison and essentially reversed course and was able to get out and also get an education
Mhm.
on top of that, I agree that I don't know if he needs to go on to be like, yes, and then I have this house with my wife and I'm studying political science. That again, as we talked about with Dwight, might be a bit more of a red flag. As much as you talk about maybe it's not exactly the most applicable despite the title, when it comes to Survivor voting, you see political science, and I think that is something that, much like if you had like a politician themselves out on the island, would be something that would raise some eyebrows.
Yeah. So we will see what Jesse ultimately tells everybody else. Mike, what else from the bio from Jesse?
So, past survivors, a couple of other people that Jesse mentioned. So, I will say another reason why Jesse caught some eyes is a little cocky in
Oh,
his bio. He said, I'm basically Spencer or Christian if they got jumped into a gang at 15. I'm definitely bringing an academic mindset to the game because I've spent more hours thinking about how people vote than Sandra and Boston Rob combined.
hmm. Okay.
So,
I mean,
where's Jesse's
he
statue?
he does have a PhD. That I don't know how often those two are thinking about how many people are where people are voting when they're not on Survivor. So I do think that in all of his years of studies, that I do think that that's probably accurate.
I just love the image though of Christian Hubicki like joining the Bloods at 15.
Yeah. In a gang, yeah. That would be something.
That'd be a hell of a survivor what if. Also, when asked, why do you believe you could be the sole survivor? He says, I've researched voting behavior for years. I
Yes.
don't care if I'm out there with someone who's never missed an episode of Survivor or someone who's played 3 times already. They ain't gonna hold a candle to me strategically.
Okay. All right. Just talking a big game.
Talking a big game, which again might have been true
Yeah.
to, someone that we was mentioned before in Spencer, like might just be a bit of blowing hot air to purposely, get onto the show, make good TV. But I do think that Jesse, at least from the outset, has some interpersonal skills. I do worry a bit about the idol thing, right? He says, like, I can't help myself. It's Survivor. I might start looking for idols. We just spoke about that with Dwight, how that could be possibly a bad idea. But I do think maybe unlike Dwight, he seems to have enough of that life experience and interpersonal skills to be able to, like, if he does step in it, at least try to wipe that mud off of his shoe a bit more and just say that they were, crawling under to get something like the advantage amulet.
Hmm. Mike, does Jesse have any pet peeves to speak of?
Oh yeah, we've got quitters,
Yeah.
people who complain about things but aren't willing to change,
Yeah.
and personalized license plates.
Oh, interesting.
So going back to Iowa Kramer would not like the ass man tag.
Yeah. All personalized license plates?
Apparently. I mean, look, he was in juvenile hall. Do they still make license plates there, or is that a bit of a stereotype in terms of the prisonal system?
I'm just sorry to say, I have no idea.
Yeah, it
But
could just be like, I've made so many of those in my time.
boy, okay. Well, I'm glad that I don't have one in case I'm ever driving around and see Jesse.
Exactly. Like, you come in contact with him, watch out. If you have a soul, especially if you have Soul Survivor on your license plate, you might
Okay.
take a lot of umbrage with that.
I would not. Mike, if you had a vanity license plate, what would it be?
Full bloom. Like, it's got to be right. Just take out some of the vowels, take out one of the L's. Like, I think I'd be able to fit there.
FULBLOOM?
Maybe
Could be
like
seven. Is it 7
FUL.
letters? Yeah.
I think, or like FULBLM, or like BLOM.
Hmm.
I don't know. Then you start to get into mispronunciation categories. But I think there's something
Yeah.
there. It's a sure enough phrase. What about
Like,
you?
yeah,
Would it just
to
be
go back to the
RHAP?
White Lotus. It's like, oh, wow, this guy has BLM on his license plate. Cool,
Zach,
cool guy.
let me
Yeah.
pull you over. I heard so many things about you.
Yeah. This guy's full BLM. Wow. Look at this guy. Yeah.
And that's how I met your mother with Jennifer Coolidge. What would yours be? Just RHAP, you think?
No, I don't know. Let me think about that. I would love to get some suggestions from the listeners of
Mm.
what should my vanity license plate be. But again, I'd like, how could I ever show my face to Jesse if I did that?
Or your tailpipe.
Yeah. Okay.